You've heard terms like decolonization and anti-oppression, but how do they actually apply to your business? Can you honestly say that you've done the work to ensure your business is doing no harm? If you're unsure of where to start on this journey, or you feel worried about getting it wrong, you're not alone. Decolonization work isn't about shame or perfection. It's about love, liberation, and taking intentional steps towards building a more inclusive and just business. Today's deeply rested guest is going to help us do just that. Silvana Espinoza Lau is a liberation and decolonization consultant. She helps coaches, therapists, and other service-based providers decolonize and liberate their businesses to make their services more welcoming and affirming for clients who hold marginalized identities. If you are ready to move beyond theory in your business, to start making real, tangible changes without fear or shame, I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation with Silvana. This convo was originally recorded for my fundraising event, the Rest and Success Code, but it feels more relevant now than ever before. So I'm really excited to be sharing it with you again today. Sit back, relax, and prepare yourself to be bathed in love, joy, and liberation as you learn Silvana's deeply rested, shame-free approach to decolonization. Welcome to Deeply Rested, the podcast that helps people doing good work in the world take incredibly good care of themselves. I'm your host, retired therapist and disillusioned business coach, Megan Meganson. I'm on a mission to help people like you unlearn the rules that keep you trapped in self-doubt so that you can recover from burnout and finally become deeply rested. If you enjoyed today's show, be sure to subscribe to this podcast and join our weekly newsletter at deeplyrested.com/newsletter. Now, it's time for the show. Hello, Silvana. Welcome. I'm so glad you're here.
Hi, Megan. Thanks so much for having me. I'm also so very excited to be here.
We are going to have a really rich conversation today, I think, about decolonization and our businesses. And we've just been connecting before we hit record, and I think are just really both open to letting this conversation go where it goes. So folks who are listening, you are about to go on a journey with us that we don't even know what's about to happen. So we don't know.
Yeah.
Which
I think it's very exciting. Yeah. The way that you, the conversation that we were having beforehand, it definitely feels like a journey where I think there will be a lot of curiosity about the things that we will talk about.
Yeah. Yes. And isn't that a little like microcosm for life of like, we're here, we know why we're here, but we don't know what's about to happen. Like,
isn't that amazing though?
Yeah. And so, okay. Well, before we dive in, we're going to talk about decolonization today.
Yeah.
Which is very much like in the zeitgeist at the moment, right? Like people are using this word, they're talking about it, and we're going to talk about it. But before we sink into this discussion, I would love to hear in your own words a little bit about who you are and what brought you to this work specifically.
For sure. Yeah. So my name is Silvana Espinoza Lau. And in a traditional sense, or in a Western sense, if you will, I am a marriage and family therapist in Oregon. I've been a therapist since 2014, and I've been in mental health since 2010. So it's been a while. And I have experienced mental health and being a receiver of services since then, or actually since way before then. So I have been a therapy seeker. I have been a therapy intern, a therapy grad student. I have been on that other side of receiving that service. And what I found out while doing that is that services usually are tailored to just a small segment of the population. And because I discovered that and I experienced that is the reason why I decided to not only offer therapy services, but then also offer consultation and coaching services, which is the other thing that I do.
Mhm.
So the other part of my business is to coach and consult with therapists, with healers, with coaches, with service providers who would like to decolonize their practices, their
Mhm.
businesses, the services that they are offering to
Mhm.
their clients.
Mhm. Wow. I really appreciate this perspective of I have been both a giver and a receiver of healing work. And I've experienced on both ends of the spectrum ways in which the system isn't meant for me and isn't meant for all people. And it's really interesting. This is the final. I'm recording the final interview today for the Rest and Success Code this season. And this hasn't come up in any of the conversations so far, the way that we are both giver and receiver of the work that we do.
Exactly.
Um, I'm gonna noodle on that. That feels really important. Well, thank you, for being here and for doing this really powerful work of guiding us through big and often challenging conversations. Today, I really want to approach this conversation with you, assuming that I know nothing about decolonization, assuming that our listeners know nothing about decolonization. Like, I just really want to invite everyone listening to, set aside the work that you've done, the articles that you've read, and see what happens when we take a deep breath
Yes.
and open our minds to receiving this conversation and this information from a new person, a new voice. So that's what I'm going to be doing right now in this conversation is really setting aside what I think I know and really letting my own questions and feelings and vulnerabilities guide what we talk about here today. So,
Mhm.
how does that feel for you?
That sounds amazing. And I do think that that is the way in which most, if not all, learning should happen, right? Um, in a way that has a lot of curiosity, in a way that maybe it's going to make me feel very humble. And it's going to make me realize that I don't know everything, and that is okay. And there's
Mhm.
always going to be someone new, someone else to teach me something new. And it's so amazing and so beautiful to be open to new teachings or new perspectives or new ways of seeing something, or to discover that I no longer have a certain what we call a blind spot or a foggy spot, right? So I love how you're setting this the foundation for this conversation.
And it's vulnerable being
Yes.
open to learning something in a new way. And we're going to talk in a little bit about why this conversation feels so scary for so many of us.
Mhm.
But I noticed that even in my own body right now that, most of the time when I'm doing an interview, I'm certainly showing up with curiosity and I'm listening to what's coming up for me, but it's not about me.
Mhm.
And I feel like when we're talking about decolonization or anti-oppression or anti-racism or whatever angle through which you're entering
Yeah.
this work, it exposes your humanness at the deepest, rawest
Yes.
level, and it can feel scary. So I'm noticing that in my own body, and we're gonna talk more about that in a minute. But just to really kick this off, help me understand, what is decolonization? What does it mean? And how does it
Mm.
apply specifically to me and my tiny little business?
For sure, for sure. So I I am assuming, or maybe I shouldn't assume. Maybe most of us understand the idea of colonization to then understand the idea of decolonization, right?
Mhm, mhm,
Colonization is not just the idea, but the fact that centuries ago, people from mostly Europe decided to go to other countries or to other territories to explore. But we know that what happened is not only that they explore, but unfortunately, there was not what we call now acculturation, right? There was not a mix of cultures. What happened was that there was an oppressive culture imposing their ideas on other cultures, right? And when we are imposing, we're not just imposing ideas, but we are imposing new habits and other ways of seeing the world, and maybe even religion or spirituality or the way that we educate our children. Or maybe we're also imposing the way in which we relate to others and to the way that we relate to things, the way that we relate to work, the way that we relate to education, school, et cetera, right? So over the centuries, there has been a dominant culture imposing their ways on people. And also for centuries, not just decades, these people who have been oppressed have been trying to undo all these things that have happened, right? Have been trying to decolonize all the colonization that happened. So to me, a simple way of understanding decolonization is the idea that we want to undo all this harm that happened, right? We want to remember what were the other ways in which we can educate ourselves. We want to remember and honor and go back to the other ways in which religion and spirituality can happen, the other ways in which we can relate to others, in which we can be in relationship with people, with things, with nature, with the land, so that there's not just only one way that has been very oppressive, and so that there are different ways in which we can be and exist in this world, right? So that would be the very general idea of decolonizing, right? And just to name the elephant in the room, when we're talking about decolonization, we're talking about decentering white, Western, heteronormative, patriarchal ways, right? In other words, the ways that have centered um, white, old, Western European men, right? That happen to be heterosexual and maybe cis, or as far as we know, right? Among other things. So we are trying to decenter that. That's not the only type of person that exists in the world. And that is not the only type of person for whom we should be offering our services. And so to bring it to our businesses, colonization has been happening for so long that sometimes we don't realize that we are centering these people with privileged identities, right? So I think that's why it's scary, because we have the best of intentions with our businesses, with the services that we provide, and to realize that we have been doing it in a way that harms people is just something that is so hard to fathom, so hard to, that was not my intention, but have I been doing this by omission, by not knowing? So to me, that's why decolonization is so important in our small businesses, or as a small business owner, is trying to figure out what are the ways in which my business has been centering people with privileged identities, and how can my business also decenter those identities, and how can my business be welcoming and be affirming, my practices be welcoming and affirming of people who don't have those privileged identities, right? People who are not white, who are not neurotypical, who are not cis het white old men, if you will. So how can my service really be accessible to all the people that I would like to reach, and all the people that I would like to be in community with?
Okay. Mic drop. That was so good. There are 100 different threads we could pull on
I know.
in everything you just shared. I want to just go to the threads that are really landing in my body as I'm listening to you. And when we're going to come back in a minute to really talk more about the fear and the avoidance, especially for people like me who are cis het white women. We give the men a really bad rap. At least maybe every other day, I'm like, oh God, another white man. I'm so over it. But then I'm like, yeah, girl, but you're a white woman and you're over you too. So Um, we're going to come back to that in a moment. But as I listen to you really share your understanding of decolonization, I really appreciate, first of all, kind of slowing down and saying, before you dive into looking at like, how does this affect you and your business and what can you do? We have a responsibility to zoom out and really hold in our minds and in our hearts the historical picture, the historical understanding that this started long ago and has impacted everybody, all of our ancestors, all of our friends, our neighbors, and their ancestors, that this is so much bigger than any one person or any one group of people, and that we have a responsibility to understand that history. And that's something I really feel I haven't done enough of in my own work. Is, I know the outline of the story. I've read the Cliff's Notes,
the timeline.
Yes,
of
yeah,
what
like,
happened, right?
yep, I know the timeline. I know like the major plot points, but that doesn't feel like enough. It feels like there's a responsibility of really being in the truth of the story. I really appreciate that you said this is truth. Like, these are facts. Like, no revision. There's no room for revisionist history here. Like, these are facts.
Yeah.
So can you say just a little bit about how can we really understand the history? What do you think? Is it about like reading books, or I don't know, watching documentaries? Like, if I really want to understand the history of colonization, where do I begin?
Where do I begin? That's a great question. I think that maybe it is my neurodivergent brain, but I think that we can begin wherever we want to. And I can share some ideas of where to begin, right?
Beautiful.
Books are definitely a good place to begin, right? The way that I see it is we are these amazing human beings, and we have a brain, and we have emotions, and we have a body. And if you believe in the idea of a spirit, then you also have a spirit, right? So there are so many ways in which we can understand the history of colonization and decolonization as well, right? So books are a great idea, are a very great cognitive way of understanding it. If you don't know much about the history, then of course you can get a book from the library, buy a book from an educator, preferably someone with lived experience, right? Because again, most books, most research has been done by people with privileged identities. And by privileged identities, I mean the identities that have been centered throughout historically, right? White, Western, European, et cetera, et cetera. So you can learn through books written by people who have lived experience. By lived experience, I mean Black authors, BIPOC authors, Latinx, Asian authors, and not only that, neurodivergent. So anyone who's not at the center, read from them, read whatever they have to say. That's a good way of learning. Another good way of learning is if you are on social media, follow these educators. Not just the people who are, and when I say educators, I like to make that difference between, one thing is to be an educator either on social media or in any other platforms, and a completely different thing is to be an influencer, right? So as educators, we really want to teach you, and we are devoting our time, our emotional energy to teaching people what has been our lived experience and what has happened to our communities. So follow them, learn from them, support them if that is possible, or spread their message if it's at all possible, right? There are so many other ways. You mentioned documentaries, of course. If your learning style is not one to read from a book and sit for hours, reading, then documentaries, podcasts, those are also a great idea. I would also add diversify your friends, because that is a very experiential way of learning, right? But there is a difference between diversifying your friends and you wanting only friends from a certain community so that you can learn.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that. I was like, ooh, it feels
Yeah.
like a fine line.
There's a
Like,
fine line.
yeah, we don't want to make these aren't like friendships to be exploited, right?
Exactly.
Like, I'm not like, okay, so I'm a white woman, so I'm not going to be like, oh, I really need to make some Black friends so that I can have them like tell me more about the Black experience.
Exactly.
Like, yeah. So then it is an interesting conversation for another interview. It's like, how does one diversify their friend group without going into it with an exploitative intention?
Exactly.
And that's very interesting.
Yeah. And this is my very brief, vague answer.
Okay, great.
When you go into a friendship, are you going with the idea of connecting with this person because you do have things in common, because you like them, because you have a friend crush on them, if you will, right? Because you think that you two would get along really well? Or are you going into this friendship with the idea of learning, diversifying? I don't have any other, insert the identity here, any other Black, Asian, neurodivergent friends, so I need one.
Right.
That obviously is the wrong way.
Right.
About it, right? The idea is, I want to connect. I really like this person. I want to connect.
I want to connect. And I think as I'm sitting here holding this in my own body right now, I'm realizing, then you have to show up in different spaces.
Yes.
Because I think as adults, it's across the board, it's hard to make friends as adults because we are so set in our ways. Like we know what we like. We go where we go. And I'm in a very white city. I live in Portland, Oregon. You live outside of Portland, Oregon, right? Like it's
also
Portland.
Very white.
Yeah, it's like it's very white. And I need to really look at, where do I spend my time? I think, what restaurants do I go to? What community events am I involved in? And then how can I diversify where I'm showing up as a person, also as a business owner, so that I'm in more diverse rooms that will then create organic opportunity to make more diverse friends.
Completely.
Okay, well, this is great.
Good.
I want to come back to your beautiful definition of decolonization. There were two threads in what you were saying that were really landing for me. The first is that our intention in decolonizing our lives and our businesses is to undo harm. Sometimes I think the conversations, we were talking about this before we hit record, that often conversations about decolonization are very heady, right? They're very cognitive, they're very academic, and which is being in the colonized mind.
Completely.
Right? To really make things intellectual and academic, and it's also like these conversations can be very black or white. It's like, to decolonize something is to totally, burn it to the ground and build it up again. And it feels self-centered in a way. I don't know exactly how to say it other than that. Like, there's something about it that feels self-serving of look at me, I did this thing. And the very first thing you said was, no, this is about undoing harm. And that just brought me into my heart space, into compassion. No, this isn't about changing something just because I'm supposed to change it. This is about, what can I do inside of my business to undo harm? I just really feel that. And the other piece is, you didn't use this word, so I want to check this out and see if this word actually fits.
Yeah.
You're talking about all of these other ways, going back to these other ways. It's also beautiful. I didn't hear you say it's about erasing how you live your life. It's not about being okay, I'm not going to live my life like that anymore. I'm going to live my life like this other cultural group instead. You were it's about pulling these pieces back in. And the word that was coming to me was reclaiming. There's this reclaiming of elements of other cultures and other people that have been violently oppressed and like really welcoming them back in to the world. And it just made me think about parts work when you were saying it. Like for all the therapists listening, we're like, yeah, we get it. We all know parts work, right? But it feels like this like cultural, like collective parts work where we're trying to like bring everything back into alignment so there can be more integration where no one is harmed. Like no one is harmed in the making of this life and business.
Exactly.
How do you feel about the idea of like reclaiming or integrating?
I love it. I love it because there is something else that you said, and that I also, there's another word that you use that I also use in my trainings, and it's this idea of the binary, right? I don't think that it's a binary. I think that it's a continuum. So to me, the idea of saying this is wrong and this is right is not the right way. It's not the way of going on about this, right? We cannot say there is a right way of existing and there is a wrong way of existing. I do believe that we are all in this continuum trying to decolonize our practices or trying to reclaim parts of us because we have been oppressed in some ways or another. And yeah, to me, it makes a lot of sense to be in a space of reclaiming.
Okay. Thank you for sharing your definition is too rigid of a word, but I feel like you just delivered such a beautiful lesson about where to start in understanding the history of colonization and a way to understand decolonization that isn't rooted in a binary, right? It's not like there's a right or a wrong way to do it. It very much is this really nuanced and tuned in approach of noticing where is there harm to be repaired and where, and like really examining as a business owner, in what ways have I unknowingly and unintentionally reinforced the status quo in my business. And really, and it's not about me having done something wrong. It's just like, yeah, I'm ready at this moment in my life to really look honestly depersonalized, right? It's not, I didn't do anything wrong, but I didn't do anything wrong, and I am perpetuating cycles of harm by not examining where am I doing what I've been taught to do. And it's almost like, okay, there's like a collective moment here for white people in particular to break the cycle and to do it with love and compassion. And it can be gentle, and it's about undoing harm. It's about reclaiming ways of being and existing that have been lost or oppressed. And I think like as I'm feeling into this with you, I'm also noticing that like, yeah, this is a lifelong process, right? This isn't like, I'm saying that for myself because sometimes like my internal, and I'm sure this is true for a lot of people listening, like I'm a very sensitive person, and really getting into this history and really looking at how I'm perpetuating harm can be really overwhelming. Like the pain and the guilt and the shame and the desire for it to be different. And then I can kind of trigger myself into, okay, like you have to do all of the dismantling right now. And you have to read all of the books right now. And then I I get flooded, and then I back away and shut down and avoid. And I'm like, well, that's not helping either. So it feels to me like it needs to be a really slow process. And I'm just curious if you can, it's taking me forever to arrive at this question, but here it is. Can you speak to timing and pacing of doing decolonizing work?
Completely. Yeah. Well, I think that you have already shared part of the answer, which is it's a lifelong process, right? What is the right timing? What is the right pacing? It is your timing and it is your pacing. one thing that I like to say in my trainings is that we have three resources, right? We have our energy, we have our time available, and we have money as well as a resource, right? And that's maybe a conversation for another day. There's nothing wrong with money. There's everything wrong with capitalism, right? So those are the three resources that we have at any given time, and we have them in different quantities, right? So if what I have the most of right now is time, then maybe decolonizing my business is going to look completely different than for the person whose resource is money, right? If what I have is energy, then the way in which I am going to decolonize my business is going to be completely different than the way in which a person who has a lot of time is decolonizing their business, right? So it has to do with my bandwidth, with the amount of energy that I have, how much time I have available. And it has to do also with my learning style, with my nervous system, with the things that I enjoy. Because to me, the idea of decolonizing my business doesn't have to be an obligation. It has to be something that I am doing, that I am enjoying, or that I am inspired to do, because again, I want to undo harm, right? So if I start thinking of, I need to read the book, and I have to follow this person, and I have to contribute to this cause, and I have to change the paperwork, and I have to do it the way that this other person is doing, I am not realizing that white supremacy is again creeping into my business in the form of comparing myself, in wanting to be productive in a certain way, or wanting to do things because culturally these are the ways in which we think things should be done. But I am not listening to myself, or I am not attuned to my business to figure out what is it that would work better for me and the business that I have and the services that I offer and the clients that I am offering that service to, right? So
yeah, even the way it's so what I'm feeling, my mind is like, okay, this feels really important. That even the way you're describing it, there's like it feels like discipline. Like you've been wrong and you have caused harm, and now you need to make it right, and you need to make it right by doing all of these things as fast as possible. And there's a way that feels like punishment. Like it
completely.
feels like, I don't know, like this is I'm like, should I say this? But I'm gonna say it because it's true for me.
Sure.
There's like a violent image that's coming into my mind as I was like listening to you, and it's like the image of having like a cat of nine tails and like whipping yourself. It's like it has that. It feels heavy. It feels painful. It feels, and of course, our nervous systems will not want to do that. And I feel like what you're offering is an invitation into love and joy and lightness. And correct me if I'm wrong, but like my sense is that you're saying decolonizing your business can actually be freeing and
Liberating.
And maybe even pleasurable and joyful. And there can be laughter, and it doesn't have to be torture to do this work.
Not at all. There's one thing that I think we have already said in this conversation, and is that colonization does not only harm the people who have been oppressed, right? But colonization also harms the people who have oppressed and people who have privileged identities. So colonization harms everybody. And so if I am going to decolonize my business, what I am doing is stopping the harm to myself, to my clients, to my community. To me, the idea of decolonizing our businesses is very community-based. It leads to having these connections. And I am not talking about, yes, I'm going to make so many best friends, but to me, it is about knowing that I am in the right relationship with my clients, with other business owners, um, in ways in which really honor my values, and in ways in which are not going to harm anyone. And in ways in which, if I realize that I have been harming someone because of something that I didn't know, I am just going to correct course. I am not going to punish myself. I am not going to call myself, oh my God, I'm such a bad person for doing this. But I'm just simply going to say, okay, I have realized where my mistake was, and now I'm going to do it differently. Whether because I am hiring a consultant, because I am reading a book, I am learning from an educator, but now it's my opportunity to learn to do things differently so that I can continue to be in connection, again, with other business owners, with my own business, with my clients, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
It's really beautiful the way you're describing it. It's like, I don't know, this feels really important because I find so many of the conversations that I've listened to or the people that I've worked with, the approach to this work is very punishing and very shaming. And while I completely understand the need to really sit and feel the pain and, like we have to collectively feel the pain of the harm that has been done. If you just live in that pain and harm, you don't continue the work.
Exactly.
And so this invitation to like enter the work through joy and like look at how look at the love. Like can be so much. Instead of doing harm, I'm going to offer love, and I'm going to try to like offer that love and that humility to the people I am beginning to discover have been left on the sidelines in my own business. I mean, this is something I'm really going to feel into because it's like, oh, like the work doesn't have to be so painful every step of the way. And I think that's why a lot of service providers and healers avoid doing the work, because they're so sensitive to pain that they're just like, I just physically can't do it. But it doesn't have to be that way. Like, it really can be an act of love. That's just blowing my mind right now. Yeah.
I mean, if you think about it, two words that we have talked about are punishment and, I believe, guilt or shame, right? There's no way that I believe there's no way that we can move towards action if we are feeling shame or guilt, or if we think of that action as a form of punishment, right? Or there's no way that is going to be fruitful if we are moving from a place of shame and guilt, or if we think that is my punishment, right? Which is also very colonized, right? It is okay if I feel shame and guilt, or if I think that this is my punishment, but the moment that I am feeling that, I need to also realize, or I need to feel those feelings so that they move through my body, and so that I can go towards action from a place of connection, from a place of love, right? So, I'm feeling this horrible shame, and that makes sense. And if I remain in this shame, I am going to remain stuck, or I am going to remain paralyzed, and nothing is going to happen with my business. Right? So
it's like over-identifying with one part of us, and it's perpetuating the harm that's being done. Like, okay, great. Now, great. Like, you felt bad. Like, who did that? You're feeling bad. Who's that serving? It's like, if you're stuck in that part, then you're harming yourself, and probably you're just continuing to perpetuate harm in whatever way your business is creating harm, because you're not in a workable place to shift and change it. So maybe, like, when I'm just thinking about, okay, so what am I going to do? Like, the next time I'm in this place and I'm feeling the pain and the guilt and the shame and the total overwhelm, like, you know what? I'm going to meet that part of me with love.
Yeah.
Because I know if I meet that part of me with love and tenderness and understanding, that I will move through that part and then into a part that is ready to go, okay, how can I give this love to someone else? How can I dismantle something in my business that could be better? So we are going to use love as the tool to decolonize. Well, what a crazy concept. Like reclaiming the thing that we lost in this process.
Yes.
Feels like it's landing so differently in my body. So I can just tell within myself, like, okay, this is an important piece of the puzzle.
Yes.
I want to talk. I mean, we're coming to the end here, even though we could keep going for a long time. But I want to talk about choosing your clients. This is something that you started to speak to earlier in our conversation, about really looking at, okay, who are the clients that come into my business? And for many of us, myself included, there is a very homogenous identification of the clients that we serve, right? For me, it's mostly white women.
Mhm.
And when that's the case, there's an invitation for us to really zoom out and to say, what am I doing here that is bringing in all of these similar types of people, but not other types of people? And I'm wondering if you can say a little bit more about how we can begin that dismantling when we are really starting to recognize that something isn't quite right because all of our clients look the same. And if I could just, like, a quick disclaimer on that is, I find that people that I work with, when we're having this conversation, sometimes will swing wildly to the other end of the spectrum, where they'll be like, okay, fine, I'm not going to have a target market. I'm not going to have a niche. Like, I'm just going to, like, anybody who wants to come can come because I don't want to exclude anyone. And I feel like that's too far of a swing. Like, we can still have a target market and we can still have a niche in our businesses, but we want to make our focus area more inclusive and diverse. Okay, I just said a lot of different things, and I'm just very curious to hear what's showing up for you.
Yeah. Lots of things are showing up for me. So let's see, where do I begin? We cannot serve all people, right? I think that it's okay to accept that we cannot serve everybody. We we have our lived experience, and chances are people with similar lived experiences are going to feel drawn to our businesses. So that is a fact, right? And yes, we can learn. We can be allies. We can be accomplices. We can showcase other identities, and we can support other identities, and we can welcome them in our businesses, offer them services. Yes, that is possible. But I need to have a certain knowledge about those identities, and I need to be constantly learning more about those identities to better serve them, right? So a more concrete example, if I am a white person, which is, well, you gave that example about yourself, right? A white business owner, if I want to serve people of color, then who are the educators that I am following, who are people of color, and who are teaching me how to better serve people of color, right?
Okay.
Just to give a very broad example.
Yeah.
But also understanding that it is too naive to say, yes, I can serve everybody. Me as a white person, able person, cishet person, I can serve BIPOC, and I can serve neurodivergent people, and I can serve people living in fat bodies, and I can serve people, it's okay to narrow down the identities of the people that you want to serve. And I think that's actually very ethical, because it's impossible to know everything about everybody.
Yeah.
Just like it's impossible to offer all of the services, right? You offer either, I don't know, you are a copyright, a copy coach, or you are a therapist, or you are, I don't know, a financial specialist. So you have narrowed down your service. You can also narrow down the people that you serve, trying to be affirming and inclusive of other identities, but not of all the identities. I think that that's just impossible.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that. I think that's a place where I've gotten tangled up and I see my clients getting tangled up. There's coming back to this punishing, the shame and the punishment. There's a real fear within sensitive people who truly care of getting it wrong and making it worse.
Yes.
And then we take no action at all because we're in trauma response in our bodies, right? We're afraid of getting in trouble. And it feels like that we have to diffuse that. Like we really have to, and when I say we, I mean like white people. Like we have to like diffuse the fear of getting in trouble. We have to be okay asking questions and making mistakes and get really comfortable repairing. And then we have to be in love and in joy and in liberation as we're doing the work, feeling the hard stuff when it comes up, being really present with that, but doing the actual work with a smile on our face, because like that is the energy that's going to fuel the actions that we have to take to do the hard work of decolonizing our businesses. That's what I'm really like feeling into right now.
Yeah. Completely. And one more thing that I would add as someone with marginalized identities, and I will just name two, right? Being a person of color and being queer, I would be even more thankful to a business owner, a service provider who's telling me, yeah, I can support you, a white, let's say a white business owner who wants to support me. And if they tell me, I want to support you and I can do that from your identity of being a person of color, because these are my mentors and these are the educators who are also people of color, and I have learned from them and I am contributing to these causes. But I cannot help you as a queer individual because I have not learned enough. To me, that sounds very ethical and so honest. So then I can choose whether to buy your service or not. Or there's like an informed consent as to how much you can help me or not, right? So I think that also diffuses a lot of that punishment and a lot of that guilt and this idea of I have to get it right, right? As a service provider.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. It's really freeing to go, oh, I can just be honest. What a concept, like, oh, I can just like be very transparent and saying, here are the landscapes and the lived experiences and the identities that I feel comfortable navigating and talking about. And here's why. And here are the areas that are very new to me and different and unexplored.
Yes.
And our only job is to tell the truth. And then we can trust fully our potential clients to decide for themselves if we are a safe person for them to work with or not. But if we don't give them the information, then, I'm putting my sex therapist hat on for a second. My favorite line about consent is, you can't say yes if you can't say no.
Completely.
And I feel like by not leading with, here's what I understand, I'm not actually giving people a chance to say no because they don't know. So if I could just be, radically transparent and honest about my identities and what I have learned and what I haven't learned, then I'm actually giving people who are considering working with me an opportunity to say yes or no from a really informed place. And like that alone is a really powerful decolonization action that I can take in my business.
Yeah, because that is going to be a heartfelt yes from the potential client, as opposed to 80% yes or 90% yes. I'm not so sure, but I guess I'll work with you type of yes, right? So to me, it's a win-win.
Wow. This is so rich and important. And I would love, as we come to the end, for you to tell the people listening how they can work with you. Coming back to what you said earlier in the conversation, this is not work we can do in isolation. We need guides. We need mentors. And it's really important that we are working with people with boots on the ground, which even that is such a colonial expression, isn't
Yes,
it? Yeah,
it is.
totally. Okay, so let's just like we have boots on the ground. That's terrible. I'm gonna remove. I've been working for the past couple of years on noticing like what
Me too.
expressions and idioms,
Yeah, all of them. Me too.
like like and really, thing comes out of my mouth, and then I'm like, wait a minute, where did that come from? And then I like
Yeah,
Google it,
you
and I'm
Google
like,
it. Yeah.
oh, okay, now I need to
Uh-huh.
remove that from my brain.
Me
Okay,
too.
so removing boots on the ground from my brain right now. But we need to work with people who have these lived experiences.
Yes.
And I'm really taking that away from this conversation. So, in the spirit of seeking out safe people who have these lived experiences with whom we can do the work of decolonization, can you please tell the people how they could potentially work with you?
Yeah, for sure. So you can find me via my website, which is www.seventhselfconsulting.com. And if you are a therapist, I have a small group program for 9 weeks where we figure out how you can decolonize your mental health practice, decolonize your treatment and yourself and your relationships and the business and the paperwork and everything. And if you're a service provider, a coach, a healer, or a small business owner, we can work one-on-one. We can work together on decolonizing every aspect of your business. I can audit your site, I can audit your paperwork, and we can do it together in a way that works for you and for your business, so that it's more affirming and welcoming for more people.
Beautiful.
So those are the two offerings that I have.
Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah.
And I would love to wrap up with a bonus question that I have asked every guest this season.
Yes. Please.
So something that I think a lot about is how capitalism has really trained us to think that money is the only thing that our business is good for, like that our business is here to make us money. And I really want to invite people to rethink revenue, like really rethink what is revenue? How is my business paying me? Because the truth is, as business owners, we have more autonomy and authority and flexibility than any other people in this culture to create the lives that we are craving.
Yes.
So I would really love to know, what is one way that your business pays you in something other than money?
I love that question because I have such an immediate answer. My business pays me in freedom. And, working for someone else in agencies and community mental health, I did not realize how constricting that was for me. And having my own business, yes, it has its pros and cons, or it has its stressors, but the freedom that I have as a business owner, that is something that I never imagined having before, right? From setting my own schedule to knowing when I'm going on vacation to, deciding when I have a meeting with myself, to figure out my taxes or to figure out my schedule for the next year or for the next quarter, and community. That would be my second answer to your question. I never imagined that my business would help me create community. It doesn't matter if it's me offering something and facilitating a group, but it so feels like I am in community. And even if, like I said before, even if these people don't become my best friends, it does feel like there's people with whom I have something in common. And that is something that I would have never, ever expected to have out of a business. So those are the two things that are so valuable for me, for my business.
Freedom and community.
Yes.
I feel both of those so deeply, and it's liberating. It's another, it's another way of decolonizing, I think, or at least deprogramming from capitalism.
Completely.
I mean, there's such a strong intersection there, but to go, wait a minute, this isn't all about money, and this is bringing me so much. Freedom, community are two really beautiful answers. And I'm sure that they are going to inspire a lot of people to think about how their business is paying them in creative ways. And I just have to just share so much gratitude to you for the work that you do and for your generosity and being here and having this conversation with me. I'm really honored and so thankful that we were able to share this conversation with the folks listening. So thank you very much for being a part of this.
You're so welcome. It was my pleasure. And thank you so much for having me as well.
If you enjoyed this conversation with Silvana as much as I did, I would be super grateful if you could take a few minutes to share this episode with one or two of your closest colleagues. It would help us tremendously in sharing the Deeply Rested message with more entrepreneurs. And if you want to learn more from Silvana, she has put together an unchecklist on the 9 areas of your business that you can start decolonizing today. This checklist will walk you through all of the areas in your business that you can start decolonizing to have a truly welcoming and affirming business. You can download Silvana's unchecklist at decolonizeyourpractice.com. You can also subscribe to her fantastic newsletter at decolonizeyourpractice.com/newsletter. Thanks so much for listening to Deeply Rested. Talk to you next week. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of Deeply Rested. If you enjoyed this conversation, I would love to invite you to join the Deeply Rested weekly newsletter. You can sign up at deeplyrested.com/newsletter. I hope to meet you in my inbox very soon.